What if the world's next big peace breakthrough comes from the most unlikely source, and even the best analysts can barely see it coming? The clock is ticking as Russia heads into high-stakes talks with Donald Trump. Around the globe, experts are dusting off the nearly forgotten craft of Kremlinology, searching for clues in body language, choice of words, and every staged handshake. But here's where it gets controversial. Is this summit just diplomatic theater, or could it truly signal the end of a devastating conflict? Let's peel back the curtain. As preparations for the Alaska summit unfold, the Russian leadership approaches the meeting with a cautious mixture of assurance, intrigue, and low-key optimism, even though President Trump's unpredictability keeps everyone on edge. Kremlin watching, a skill honed during the Cold War, may be rare these days, but it remains invaluable for deciphering Moscow's behavior. Rewinding a bit, Trump had previously issued an ultimatum. Russia must stop its war in Ukraine by August 8th or face bone-crushing sanctions. Seasoned observers saw this as more bluster than real threat. The sanctions lacked teeth, and in the end, Trump quietly set them aside. Just before the deadline, his envoy, Steve Witkoff, flew to Moscow, effectively asking for Putin's help in defusing a politically risky situation for Trump in the course of a 3-hour conversation. And likely with enticing incentives, Putin agreed to an early summit, even before the world could process what that meant for U.S. policy and regional stability. And this is the part most people miss. The sudden willingness to meet hints at subtle shifts beneath the surface, like Russia's recent military advances, and implications that may not be fully obvious until later. Now for the underlying reality, which is all too often overlooked. Moscow's top priority is repairing its fractured ties with Washington. Rather than pure tactical maneuvering, Russian leaders genuinely seek a new, mutually advantageous relationship with the United States. Putin's right-hand man for Ukraine, Yuri Ushakov, highlighted after the Witkoff meeting that the real purpose was to transform U.S.-Russia relations, moving beyond the tensions and frustrations of recent years. But is it naive to take these words at face value? Not necessarily. Consider Putin's own remarks on a recent trip to Murmansk, where he emphasized Russia's sincere preference for a peaceful end to conflict, provided the long-term security of the Russian state is guaranteed. He left the door open to all constructive partners. This could be dismissed as standard diplomatic rhetoric, except that, privately, many in Moscow believe Trump's desire to end what he calls Biden's war is genuine, if also driven by a political need to declare victory and move on. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, true to his diplomatic style, played coy about specifics. After a lengthy sidebar with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio during ASEAN talks, Lavrov dodged details while suggesting major developments could be announced soon. In contrast, Rubio hinted more openly that novel, practical strategies for peace talks were discussed, though no guarantees for a lasting resolution were promised. The takeaway: both sides may be exploring creative compromises, the kind the public rarely hears about until the last moment. Dig deeper. And Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov's recent comments stand out. He observed, perhaps with a trace of hope, that sprouts of common sense were finally emerging in U.S.-Russia dialogue, something sorely missing in recent years. The phrase is telling. It conjures both the fragility and potential of new diplomatic shoots, which, if nurtured, might one day thrive. Yet Putin remains guarded. He's all too aware of the formidable power of entrenched interests, the so-called military-industrial congressional intelligence, media, academia, think tank complex, or MICAMAT, to stamp out these positives before they can grow. Will these sprouts survive, or will old hostilities prevail? So where is all this heading? It's reasonable to anticipate some flexibility around previously declared Russian demands. Why? Because Moscow is determined not to stumble into its own version of Vietnam, meaning Putin wants to avoid being drawn irreversibly into a Western quagmire. Speculatively, this could mean Putin will eventually allow a face-saving joint solution with Trump, even if it's mostly cosmetic. Lipstick on a pig, as some might say, disguising what is in fact a U.S. NATO-Ukraine retreat. The controversy. Does it matter if the end of a war looks good on paper, but is messy beneath the surface? Such a compromise could possibly see Russia agreeing to a temporary ceasefire in exchange for cast-iron pledges, Ukraine rebuffed from NATO, and all U.S. support for Kyiv ending decisively. It's the kind of deal that would give both sides something to claim as a win, even if, in reality, it's a tale of broken dreams, stitched together for political necessity. But let's not ignore the wild card. Predicting Donald Trump's next move is, as the legendary Yogi Berra would say, especially tough when it's about the future. Trump thrives on unpredictability. Each day brings the possibility of abrupt reversals. Even so, both Russia and the U.S. appear willing to talk again, potentially even on Russian soil. Yet, some officials still maintain the dance by insisting the summit isn't a negotiation. Is this just diplomatic gamesmanship or a signal that deeper talks are happening offstage? And this is the point that could ignite real debate. Is the media rooting against peace talks simply because of who's leading them? As one keen observer recently wrote, it's telling to see outlets seemingly hoping for a Trump failure, even if it means ongoing war. Is it always a win when leaders meet to discuss ending conflict, or does it depend on whose narrative is being served? In the end, only time will reveal if these fragile shoots of diplomacy grow into lasting peace or wither under pressure. But this much is certain. Behind the stage summits and cryptic press conferences, profound shifts may already be underway. What do you think? Is a genuinely new chapter possible? Or are both sides merely buying time? Does it matter who brings peace, or only that it arrives? Agree or disagree? Let's hear your thoughts below, because this is one debate where every perspective truly matters.